Most men lose their authority the moment they react to disrespect. They fail to see that their rush to respond exposes restlessness, and restlessness is always interpreted as weakness. The aggressor is not watching their words, he is watching the anxiety beneath them. Justifying yourself is the first gesture of submission. A man who tries to explain what he did, what he meant, or why he does not deserve to be treated that way, places himself lower in the invisible hierarchy of the environment. Explanation does not erase the attack, it only confirms that it worked. In the game of power, reacting emotionally is admitting that the other person touched your center. When that happens, the battle ends before it begins. Disrespect does not break a man through force, but through the impulsive response of someone who has not learned to remain still while the environment attempts to provoke him. What governs the outcome is not the offense itself, but the coldness of the one who refuses to be moved by it. Society repeats the idea that respect is earned by being polite, explaining your point of view, and showing good intentions. This narrative, sold as virtue, is merely a mechanism of control designed to tame men who would be far more dangerous if they understood the true nature of human relations. In this context, politeness is not a sign of strength. It is the comfortable coating imposed on those who are expected to remain predictable. This illusion persists because many men fear rejection more than they despise submission. They believe that being understood will finally grant them acceptance, when in reality, they are only exposing their need for approval. And that need is the preferred currency of manipulators, because it reveals the exact point where authority dissolves. A man who seeks to justify himself announces that he fears losing connection, and that fear determines his position in the hierarchy. The posture of always being polite functions as a silent confession of insecurity, not because politeness is weak, but because when used as a shield it exposes fragility disguised as maturity. The world pays more attention to what you tolerate than to what you declare, and those who tolerate too much quickly become disposable. This is how disrespect finds fertile ground, in the childish expectation that good intentions will be enough to guarantee dignity. Machiavelli understood this centuries before the modern man was domesticated by the constant pursuit of validation. He knew that power is not offered, negotiated, or requested. Power is perceived, and anyone who tries to explain it has already lost it. For Machiavelli, appearing necessary was more effective than appearing virtuous, because virtue creates hope, while necessity creates caution. And caution is the only language that stops disrespect before it begins. Remaining trapped in this moral illusion is a choice to stay at the bottom of the hierarchy. The virtue here is not being understood, but becoming a presence that does not depend on the understanding of others. The real question is not whether you deserve respect, but whether you will stop surrendering it every time you try to please a world designed to weaken you. Disrespect is never spontaneous. It works as a silent diagnosis, a hierarchy test applied by someone who wants to measure how far they can advance. Every gesture, every interrupted word, every raised tone exists to observe your reaction. In that moment, what matters is not the offense itself, but the social calculation it reveals. The aggressor is not looking for conflict, he is looking for position. When someone tests you, what matters is the emotional reading they extract from your response. If the attack triggers immediate defense, they see fragility. If it triggers explanations, they detect dependency. If it triggers visible anger, they sense a loss of self-control. In every scenario, the hierarchy shifts without effort. This is how men lose power without noticing. They react before understanding the intention behind the strike. The aggressor watches the speed of your response like someone checking the pulse of an animal before capturing it. He measures your hunger for approval, your need to be seen, your urgency to justify yourself. Most men believe that a good explanation restores dignity, when in truth it only confirms that the wound was opened exactly where it should have been. The one who explains assumes he owes justification. The one who justifies himself reveals his fear of being misinterpreted. This is why, in the silent game of domination, the one who explains loses, and the one who justifies himself steps below. Disrespect is not about what was said, but about who successfully manipulated the other's emotional axis. The man who reacts too much proves he depends on external validation. The man who reacts too quickly confesses he still does not command himself. And no man who cannot govern his own center can govern any situation. The true objective of the one who disrespects is simple: to identify where you yield. The content of the attack does not matter, only the psychological breach revealed by your reaction. The test ends the moment you position yourself emotionally, and the aggressor repeats the move only when he knows he will find the same exposed point again. Reacting emotionally is the clearest invitation for new attacks to occur. When you respond quickly, whether out of indignation, irritation, or an attempt to defend yourself, you signal to the other person that your stability is fragile, and anything fragile is tested again. In social dynamics, no one wastes the chance to exploit a weakness that has already proven effective. Disrespect becomes recurrent because it finds fertile ground in your emotional predictability. This psychological pattern is simple, but few have the courage to recognize it. Anyone who tolerates an attack, consciously or not, signals that the aggressor can advance without real consequences. This tolerance is not in verbal acceptance but in emotional reaction. If the attack provokes justification, the aggressor senses dependence. If it provokes visible anger, he sees instability. If it provokes exaggerated explanations, he detects insecurity. Each of these responses teaches the aggressor to repeat the strike with greater precision. The man who reacts emotionally believes he is defending his worth, but all he does is confirm that the other person holds power over his internal state. At that moment, respect stops being a natural equilibrium and becomes negotiation. And anything that becomes negotiation loses force. Respect is not argued for, because any attempt to argue is already an admission that the disrespect had impact. Repetition is born exactly there, in the impact made visible. This is why Machiavelli observed that maintaining power depends less on brute force and more on consistency. When someone attacks and sees you vibrating emotionally, they understand they found a point of control. When they attack and find coldness, they understand they have no access to your internal structure. The difference between becoming a repeated target and becoming someone to avoid lies in how you handle the first aggression. The world does not repeat where it finds no return. Disrespect only returns when you teach that it works. Strategic silence, the absence of justification, and an impenetrable posture are not virtues. They are psychological barriers that neutralize the aggressor. The mistake is not in the initial attack, but in the response that reveals you still haven't mastered your own emotional hierarchy. Machiavelli's most effective method never depended on speeches, but on presence. He understood that words are unstable weapons. They expose anxiety, explain too much, and often reveal what should remain concealed. Presence, on the other hand, creates a silent pressure that reorganizes the environment without visible effort. When a man controls his own rhythm, the space around him adjusts. Anyone trying to decipher him realizes they lack the access required to test him. Machiavelli knew that emotional outbursts are tools of the impulsive and therefore predictable. His preferred punishment was not direct confrontation but strategic withdrawal. He stepped back at the exact moment the other expected impact, breaking the expectation and leaving the aggressor facing their own emptiness. Withdrawal is not escape, it is refusal, and few refusals are as devastating as a calculated absence. It makes clear that the other lacks the importance necessary to deserve energy. This principle is ruthless because it flips the game. The aggressor, accustomed to measuring his strength by the reaction he provokes, finds himself in front of a silence that does not yield, does not explain, and does not beg for understanding. He tries to advance and encounters an invisible wall, structured indifference. This type of authority does not shout, does not react, and does not need to prove anything. It imposes the most uncomfortable truth of power. Whoever controls their posture controls the entire narrative. Real power does not respond to the environment, it reorganizes it. When you stop reacting and become the axis others must adjust to, disrespect loses its function. It finds no emotional surface to cling to. Your posture becomes more lethal than any speech because it offers no openings, reveals no urgency, and displays no need. This is what Machiavelli understood. The most efficient force is the one others perceive without you having to announce it. Applying this principle requires coldness, not aggression. It requires deep self-control, not theatrics. Authority is born not from the response but from the ability to remain unchanged when the environment expects a reaction. Few master this movement. Those who do are no longer tested. For most people, silence is a sign of hesitation. For someone who understands the game, it is a blade. It operates in the space where words fail, the territory of interpretation. When you choose not to react, the aggressor loses the compass he used to measure his authority over you. He expects irritation, defense, explanation. Instead, he finds something far more unsettling, the complete absence of impact. It is in that void that power changes hands. Silence works because it shifts emotional control. While the average man tries to restore balance through speech, the strategic man does it through stillness. When the aggressor realizes he has no access to your center, he starts searching for signals that do not exist. He scans your eyes, your body, your rhythm, finding nothing that helps him position himself. The uncertainty becomes the punishment, and no attack thrives where the aggressor cannot predict the return. It is essential to distinguish passive silence from positional silence. The first comes from fear and reveals submission. The second comes from choice and reveals hierarchy. Positional silence is not retreat, it is territorial definition. You do not respond because you do not need to. You do not explain because there is no debt. You do not confront because the other person lacks the importance to justify your energy. This calculated refusal disorients anyone who expected to dominate you. Silence also destroys the expectation that sustains the attack. When someone disrespects you, the offense is not what fuels the movement. The anticipation of your reaction is. By breaking that prediction, you remove the only weapon the aggressor truly has, the belief that he can influence your internal state. From that moment on, the game stops being about what he did and becomes about what you chose not to give. Strategic silence is not the absence of voice, it is absolute presence. It tells the environment that you do not negotiate your dignity, that you do not rush to recover image, that you do not act to be understood. It establishes a distance few have the courage to hold. And within that distance, the kind of respect that needs no explanation is born. The most effective punishment does not come from the voice, but from the invisible architecture surrounding interactions. Instead of confronting or raising your tone, the correct move is to reduce access. Most people believe respect is imposed through explanations, emotional outbursts, or subtle threats. In reality, respect is imposed when the other person feels they have lost a privilege they once possessed. Withdrawing your attention is a silent sentence, and silent sentences are feared far more than any speech. The aggressor expects confrontation. When it does not come, he assumes you retreated, but when he realizes you did not retreat, you simply reorganized the distance. The structure shifts. He tries to reach you in the same way and finds doors that were open now partially closed. There is no warning, no explanation, no drama, only a subtle change in availability that transforms the entire environment. That is how power moves, almost imperceptibly, yet impossible to ignore. Reducing access means limiting the energy you give the other person. It means responding later, looking less, offering less time, less emotional space, less predictability. This reduction does not communicate anger, it communicates hierarchy. You make it clear that his proximity is not guaranteed, and that any attack carries a cost that does not need to be spoken. The aggressor understands he did not lose the argument. He lost territory. This strategy works because it targets what disrespect tries to exploit, the illusion that you must maintain connection to maintain value. When you alter access, you show that the connection was never essential. The drop in availability dismantles the other's expectation of control. He recognizes that he did not destabilize you, he only displaced himself, and losing position is far more painful than any harsh reply could ever be. Changing access without changing your tone is the preferred punishment of those who understand the game. It creates no open conflict, reveals no emotion, and offers no opening for counterattack. It simply recalibrates the natural hierarchy. The aggressor begins to speak with more caution, approach with more calculation, and observe before acting, because he realizes he has not gained an enemy, he has gained distance, and distance is where respect rebuilds itself. There are moments when silence and reduced access are enough, but when words become unavoidable, they must appear like a cut, brief, delayed, and non-negotiable. A short response is not a lack of argument. It is the refusal to sustain a dialogue the other person does not deserve. The strategic delay shows that you did not react. You simply chose when and how to close the matter. That difference reorganizes the hierarchy without any need to raise your tone. The definitive response operates through economy. Few words, no details, no hint of justification. When you speak little, you force the other person to fill the silence with their own interpretations, and interpretations hurt more than facts. The phrase does not explain, it defines. It does not show irritation, it shows control. It does not seek agreement, it sets a boundary. and the aggressor understands that any insistence will only increase his own exposure to ridicule. The common mistake is trying to prove something, clarify intentions, or repair an image. This impulse is childish, driven by the hope that the other person will finally understand. But someone who disrespects you is not looking for understanding. He is looking for reaction. That is why explanations are forbidden. They feed exactly what you should cut off. Defense is always a disguised request for validation, and nothing diminishes a man faster than showing he needs to be absolved. The right phrase does not confront, it ends. It signals that the conversation has concluded before it truly began. Expressions like handled, all right, understood, or any equally cold and enclosed variation create a definitive limit without opening space for debate. It is a sentence, not an opinion, and sentences carry authority even when spoken softly. The aggressor senses he has lost not because the response was harsh, but because he can no longer continue the game. The psychological impact of this move comes from contrast. After silence and distance, the final word appears as confirmation that you control the entire cadence. The short response shatters the expectation of conflict, neutralizes manipulation, and reinforces that you are not reacting. You are deciding when things end. And the one who chooses the ending is the one who controls the narrative. When the aggressor does not get the reaction he expected, something inside him breaks. He realizes he does not control the environment the way he imagined. The absence of impact works like an inverted mirror. Instead of revealing you, it reveals his own weakness. The attack that should have lowered your posture only exposes how much he depends on your reaction to validate his sense of strength. Without any return, he loses his reference point in the hierarchy. This collapse is not explosive. It is silent. The aggressor becomes restless, begins recalculating every movement, tries to reinterpret what happened, and looks for signals you choose not to provide. He wonders whether he crossed a line, whether he lost access, whether he will be ignored from now on. And for someone driven by vanity or a need for social dominance, that uncertainty is more corrosive than any direct confrontation. His mind becomes the territory where the weight of your posture operates. Gradually, his behavior shifts. The same individual who once tested your stability now approaches with caution. He speaks less, observes more, and selects words he would never have considered before. The silence that unsettled him turns into a presence that disciplines him. He understands that you do not demand respect. You generate it effortlessly. The initial discomfort becomes prudence, and prudence is the first sign of hierarchical recognition. The core point is simple. Whoever cannot affect you loses power over you. And when that loss becomes evident, the aggressor begins to manage his behavior out of fear of disappearing entirely from your sphere of relevance. He realizes he is not dealing with someone reactive, but with someone valuable. And the more valuable you become, the less he attempts to test you. The price of provoking you becomes too high for someone who has already felt the weight of his own insignificance. In the end, respect does not arise from the strength you display, but from the strength the other cannot reach. That impossibility is what reorganizes the aggressor's behavior. He does not fear you because of any threat, but because of the absence of access. And when access becomes a privilege, even disrespect learns to retreat. Every man reaches a point where he must choose between emotional relief and real authority. Relief demands immediate reaction, impulsive replies, visible demonstrations of indignation. Authority requires restraint, calculation, and the courage to sustain silence where most would collapse. The method is implacable not because it is difficult, but because it forces you to abandon the addiction to validation. It confronts the very need that keeps so many men trapped, the desire to be understood by those who never intended to understand them. Sovereignty is born precisely in that interval. The aggressor is not testing your physical strength, but your internal structure. He wants to discover whether you are shaped by the environment, or whether the environment is shaped by you. If you choose emotional relief, you surrender your position. If you choose coldness, you reveal that your identity does not depend on another's perception. This silent independence turns respect into inevitability. True authority does not explain itself. It imposes itself by the way it remains. When you apply the full method, silence, reduced access, and a delayed final response, you dismantle the mechanics of disrespect at the root. The aggressor realizes he cannot control your rhythm, cannot reach your center, and cannot extract a single emotional fragment to measure power. He learns that testing you has a price, and price creates caution. In this shift, your presence changes in value. It stops being available and becomes strategic, like territory only a few are allowed to cross. Final sovereignty is not about winning confrontations, but about never allowing them to define you. It is not about proving strength, but about removing the other's ability to touch it. This method rules without force. It rules through the invisible architecture created by your posture. The world responds to what it cannot manipulate, and the man who governs his reactions becomes exactly that: hard to reach, impossible to predict, and too costly to test. Now the question that remains is sharp and simple. Do you want to be understood, or do you want to be inevitable?